The storm clouds over Ibrox are getting darker by the hour, and Russell Martin finds himself right at the center of it. After another humiliating night in Europe, this time a 6-0 demolition at the hands of Club Brugge, the mood in the Rangers camp has gone from tense to explosive. What was supposed to be a fresh start under a new manager is quickly spiraling into a full-blown crisis, and the supporters are making no effort to hide how they feel. Chants, banners, and raw emotion are now the norm around the club, and not the passionate kind you want to see in support, but frustration boiling over into fury. Let's be honest, this wasn't just a bad night in Belgium. It was one of the most embarrassing European performances in Rangers' recent history. Before the halftime whistle had even blown, the scoreline was 5-0. 5 goals shipped in 45 minutes of football. A total capitulation. Club Brugge didn't just dominate. They dismantled a Rangers side that looked completely lost, out of shape, and mentally checked out. There was no fight, no discipline, no reaction. Just wide eyes and slumped shoulders. And for the traveling fans who made the journey, it was a betrayal. Pure and simple. Things began to unravel almost instantly. Just 8 minutes in, Rangers were reduced to 10 men when Max Arns brought down Christos Salas, who was clean through on goal. From that point on, it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Nicolo Trialdi opened the floodgates just 5 minutes into the match. Then Hans Vanaken doubled the lead with a header half an hour later. But the real horror show came in the final moments of the first half, where Rangers completely fell apart. 3 more goals came in the space of just 4 minutes. When C struck on 41, added another on 45, and Alexander Stanovic finished the half with Brugge's 5th. And all of that before the break. Russell Martin tried to react. He made a triple substitution at halftime, throwing on Finlay Curtis for J.D. Gassama, alongside Racine and Diamand. But by then, the game was already gone. The damage was irreparable. And although Rangers managed to concede just 1 more in the second half, a goal from Zully to make it 6, the final scoreline said it all. 6-0 on the night. 9-1 on aggregate. A Champions League playoff exit in the most humiliating fashion imaginable. One of the most painful images of the night came after the full-time whistle. 18-year-old Finlay Curtis, who's been a rare bright spot for Rangers in recent weeks, fell to his knees in frustration. You could see the heartbreak etched on his face. Pounding the turf, shirt over his head, this wasn't just about a bad result for him. This was a young player who genuinely cared. One of the few who seemed to grasp the magnitude of what had just happened. And to his credit, he was one of the first to acknowledge the traveling supporters. In a night filled with disappointment, Curtis showed the kind of heart and fight the rest of the squad desperately lacked. But the problem runs far deeper than one result or one bad night. Russell Martin is now under immense pressure, and frankly, he's running out of time. This European disaster follows an already worrying trend in the league. For the first time in Rangers' long and decorated history, they failed to win any of their opening 3 SPFL matches under a new manager. That kind of start is unheard of, unacceptable. And when you're managing a club with the expectations and legacy of Rangers, there's simply no room for error. The fans have had enough. Outside Ibrox, banners are starting to appear. Messages that leave nothing to interpretation. One of them reads, "Get him out now before the seats are empty." That's not a warning. That's a statement. Supporters are telling the board, in no uncertain terms, that patience has run out. That they refuse to accept mediocrity. Not now, not ever. This club was built on a standard of excellence. Competing in Europe. Dominating domestically. Anything less is seen as failure, and rightfully so. But this unrest isn't just about results. There's growing discontent over Martin's team selections and tactical decisions. Supporters are baffled by the continued absence of key figures like club captain James Tavernier and Belgian international Nicolas Raskin in big matches. These are players with proven quality, leaders in the dressing room. Yet somehow, they've been pushed to the fringes. That kind of decision-making has raised serious questions about whether Martin truly understands the squad he's working with. And the questions aren't just being whispered in pubs or debated on forums anymore. They're being shouted from the stands and plastered across social media. Is he out of his depth? That's the phrase you're hearing more and more. Because to many fans, it certainly looks like it. The team isn't just losing games. They're losing them without any clear identity, without a plan, without belief. For a club like Rangers, that's nothing short of a crisis. The problem is, there's no obvious fix. The board is now facing a critical decision. Do they stick by Russell Martin, hoping that time and stability will eventually bring results? Or do they cut their losses now, before the atmosphere becomes completely toxic and the season is written off before December even arrives? It's not an easy call, but inaction could be even more damaging. Because right now, the noise is deafening. The fans want change, and they want it fast. At this point, the pressure on Martin is almost impossible to ignore. Every match feels like a make or break. Every press conference is a minefield. And with transfer dealings still ongoing, the situation becomes even more volatile. The latest bombshell? Rangers have reportedly accepted a £10.5 million bid from Lille for striker Hamza Rigman. A player who just weeks ago looked like a long-term piece of the puzzle is now packing his bags, apparently having had his head turned by interest from France. Things between Martin and Igman have clearly broken down. The forward refused to come off the bench during the draw with Street Mirren, citing a quad injury, one that raised more than a few eyebrows given the timing. Martin later confirmed that Igman is on his way out, and that he expects the deal to go through soon. It's a messy situation, and one that's emblematic of the wider chaos surrounding the club right now. Behind the scenes, Rangers are scrambling to find replacements. There's interest in Bojan Majovski, the former Aberdeen striker, who's said to be high on the list of targets. Everton's Youssef Chermatai is another name being linked. But with just days remaining before the transfer window slams shut, the pressure to land the right players is immense. Martin is also on the hunt for a left back and a center half, both critical areas that need strengthening. The question is whether he'll even be around long enough to see those deals through. Because make no mistake, Russell Martin's future is hanging by a thread. The fans have lost faith. The dressing room looks fractured, and the results speak for themselves. From being embarrassed in Europe to falling behind Celtic before the title race has even properly begun, it's hard to see how this story ends any other way than with change at the top. Rangers are at a crossroads. Stick with a manager who's struggling to impose his vision, or make a bold decision before the season slips further out of reach. Every moment of hesitation adds to the pressure. And as the fans continue to raise their voices, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The Russell Martin experiment is running out of time. While the focus remains firmly on Russell Martin and the unraveling situation at Ibrox, the drama off the pitch is threatening to overshadow everything else happening around Rangers. The club isn't just battling poor form and a furious fan base. It's also caught up in a turbulent transfer period, where key departures and last-minute replacements could shape the very fabric of this season. Every bit of news that comes out seems to add another layer of uncertainty to an already chaotic landscape, and supporters are starting to wonder if there's any real direction left in this project at all. The most talked-about transfer story right now revolves around Hamza Rigman, and for good reason. When the Moroccan striker first arrived at Ibrox last summer, he was hailed as a major addition. Powerful, pacey, and clinical in front of goal, he was meant to be one of the pillars of a new attacking era. But fast forward to the present, and that promise has all but evaporated. The player's attitude has been questioned, his commitment doubted, and now, his exit feels not only inevitable but necessary. It all came to a head after the Street Mirren match. With the team chasing a much-needed win, Russell Martin looked to his bench and called for Igman. But the striker refused to come on, claiming he was struggling with a quad injury, a claim that didn't quite convince many within the club or among the fans. It wasn't just about the injury. It was about the timing, the body language, the silence that followed. Martin addressed the situation publicly, hinting that the player's head had been turned by outside interest and that he expected him to be gone soon. And just like that, a transfer that had been simmering in the background suddenly boiled over into full view. Lille's offer, £10.5 million, matched the release clause, meaning Rangers had little choice but to accept. And from the manager's own words, the deal is close to being finalized. He's got what he wanted, Martin said, barely masking the frustration. That phrase tells you everything you need to know about how this has played out behind closed doors. Igman's camp had reportedly been in talks with the French club since June, pushing quietly behind the scenes. It wasn't just a footballing decision. It became personal, a situation that strained relationships and tested the unity of the squad. With his departure imminent, Rangers are suddenly forced into reactive mode. There's now a scramble to bring in a replacement, someone who can step in and deliver goals immediately, which is never easy at this point in the window. Bojan Majowski, the prolific forward who impressed at Aberdeen, is believed to be the top target. He knows the league, he's proven his worth, and importantly, he wouldn't need time to adapt to the Scottish game. But getting him through the door is a different story altogether. Aberdeen are not going to let their star man go easily, and time is running out. Another option that has emerged is Youssef Chermatai, currently at Everton. A different profile of striker, younger, more of a raw talent, but potentially a smart long-term investment. The problem is, Rangers don't have the luxury of time right now. This isn't a moment for development projects or future planning. The squad needs firepower. Urgently. And unless the board can move fast and decisively, the club risks going into the next phase of the season even weaker than they already are. But the transfer business isn't limited to the attack. Martin has made it clear that he's still searching for a left back and a center back, two positions that have been problematic since the season began. Defensively, Rangers have looked fragile, disorganized, and far too easy to break down. That was painfully clear against Brugge, where the back line collapsed under the slightest bit of pressure. Injuries and suspensions haven't helped, but the truth is, even at full strength, this team doesn't look solid. Reinforcements are badly needed, and if they don't arrive before the deadline, Martin will have even fewer excuses to fall back on. Still, even if new signings arrive, the bigger question looms large. Will Russell Martin be the man to lead them? Right now, it feels like the manager is fighting a battle on every front. The dressing room appears divided. The supporters have turned, and the media pressure is becoming relentless. Every interview is scrutinized, every comment picked apart. There's no hiding anymore, and Martin knows it. You can see it in his eyes during press conferences. The calm is starting to crack. The confident, assured tone that greeted his appointment has been replaced by vague answers and tense body language. And while Martin insists that the team is moving forward, the reality is far less optimistic. Players look confused on the pitch, unsure of their roles and responsibilities. The system changes from game to game, often mid-match, and rather than adapting, the squad seems to be spiraling into further confusion. When you don't have a consistent game plan, when your best players are being benched for tactical reasons no one fully understands, and when results are going from bad to worse, it becomes hard to argue that progress is being made. James Tavernier, for instance, remains a huge talking point. The club captain has been a constant in the Rangers setup for years, known for his leadership, his attacking threat, and his ability to turn games on his own. And yet, under Martin, he's found himself sidelined at crucial moments. It's a decision that has baffled fans and analysts alike. In a team crying out for direction, why would you take your captain out of the equation? The same goes for Nicholas Raskin, a player with international experience, technical quality, and a deep understanding of the midfield battle. If you're not building around players like that, then what exactly is the plan? These aren't minor questions. They strike at the heart of the confidence, or lack of it, in the manager's vision. And with results going south, each one feels more pressing. The board now faces an impossible situation. They can either back a manager who is losing support by the day or admit the mistake and look for someone new. Someone who can steady the ship and restore belief before the season completely unravels. There's also the issue of communication. One of the hallmarks of a strong manager is clarity. Clarity in message, clarity in tactics, and clarity in expectations. But Martin's interviews are starting to sound more like damage control than leadership. He talks about staying positive and looking ahead, but there's a growing sense that he's not fully in control. Whether it's decisions about team selection, handling of transfer sagas, or reading of matches, the trust is fading fast. For the fans, it's becoming a weekly nightmare. They turn up, they sing, they back the team, and they're repaid with confusion and collapse. European dreams have been shattered in embarrassing fashion. Domestic form is nowhere near the standard required, and the club is entering another rebuild phase just a few games into the season. This isn't what Rangers football is meant to be. And the supporters, as always, are the ones left picking up the emotional pieces. Rangers don't just need a tactical overhaul. They need a cultural reset, a reminder of what it means to wear the badge. Because right now, too many players are going through the motions. Too many performances lack hunger, and too many excuses are being made. Russell Martin talks about honesty, about players being honest with themselves and with the group. But that same honesty is now being demanded of him. Is he really the right man for this job? Or has this opportunity arrived too soon in his managerial career? If he stays, the next few weeks will define everything. He'll need to deliver wins, inspire belief, and somehow reconnect with a fractured fan base. But if he goes, the board must be ready with a real solution, not another gamble, not another project. Someone who understands the demands of Rangers. Someone who can hit the ground running and restore the identity that's been lost. Because that's what this club is crying out for. Time is the one thing that's running out fast. The window's closing. The fixtures are piling up. And the voices calling for change are only getting louder. Russell Martin may still be in charge for now, but unless something drastic changes, that won't be the case for much longer. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. The news that has begun to circulate around Ibrox has all the marks of one of those football whispers that spread through pubs, terraces, and digital forums before anyone dares to put it down in writing. Yet the talk is growing louder with every passing hour. Sergio Ramos, the legendary Spanish center-back who carved his name into the history books of Real Madrid and the Spanish national team, is now being linked as the newest reinforcement for Rangers in the 2025 campaign. The story, if true, would send shockwaves not only through Scottish football but across Europe, as few could have predicted that such a towering figure, at this stage of his career, would choose Glasgow as his new home. Supporters have already begun to imagine the sight of Ramos walking out of the Ibrox tunnel, clad in blue, marshalling the back line with his trademark authority. The move, still shrouded in rumor, has been painted as a bold stroke by the club's board, who appear determined to match Celtic stride for stride not merely with youthful promise, but with proven experience, charisma, and a winning mentality that has seen Ramos lift Champions League trophies, La Liga titles, and the World Cup itself. Skepticism, however, runs parallel to excitement, and in Scotland skepticism is rarely in short supply. Many voices question whether a player of Ramos's age, even with his immaculate fitness standards and uncompromising professionalism, can adapt to the physicality and intensity of the Scottish Premiership. The pitches are rougher, the weather harsher, the refereeing less forgiving, and the matches often played at breakneck pace. Yet for every skeptic, there is an optimist pointing out that class is permanent, and that defenders with Ramos's positioning, anticipation, and sheer presence can thrive even when the legs may no longer move as swiftly as in younger days. It is not merely about sprinting to cut off an opponent. It is about reading the game 2 steps ahead, intimidating strikers with a glance, and inspiring teammates by example. There is also the commercial factor. The arrival of such a global name could swell shirt sales, boost international interest in Rangers, and even bring television deals or sponsorship conversations to a new level, something the club hierarchy would surely welcome in their constant bid to remain competitive not only domestically, but in European ventures. Within the dressing room, the speculation has likely already caused a stir, even if no player will admit it publicly. Imagine being a young defender at Rangers, suddenly confronted with the prospect of training alongside a man who has marked Lionel Messi, battled Cristiano Ronaldo in El Clásicos, and stood tall in the penalty box during the most dramatic nights of the Champions League. The learning curve would be astronomical, as Ramos brings not only his technical skills, but also an aura of leadership forged in the crucible of the highest stakes in football. Some may feel threatened, others inspired, but in either case the effect would be transformative. The culture of the club could shift overnight, with discipline levels rising, training standards sharpened, and the sense of ambition rekindled. For Rangers, who have spent years oscillating between domestic dominance and frustrating European setbacks, this could represent a statement that the club is not content with incremental progress, but instead willing to dream larger dreams, no matter how audacious they may seem on paper. The thought of Ramos shouting commands across a packed Ibrox against Celtic or European giants is enough to set imaginations alight. The fans, as always, are the beating heart of the story, and their reactions mirror the complex emotions stirred by the rumor. Outside the stadium, one hears laughter, disbelief, and awe in equal measure. Ramos and Govan? You must be joking, is a common refrain, yet it is quickly followed by imagine if it's true. Supporters have long cherished Rangers' proud tradition of attracting big names in later stages of their careers, from Laudrup to Gascoigne, and the idea of Ramos joining that lineage adds a romantic thread to the tale. Social media has already been flooded with mocked-up images of the Spaniard in blue, his hair tied back, his fists clenched after a sliding tackle on the halfway line. The dream is contagious, spreading rapidly, and even rival fans have been forced to acknowledge that if Rangers were to pull off such a coup, it would shift the balance of perception in Scottish football. It is not merely about one player. It is about the message such a signing sends, that Ibrox remains a stage capable of attracting the most illustrious names in the sport, even as they near the twilight of their playing days. Yet beyond the romance, there is a pragmatic question that lingers in every boardroom and supporters club. Can Rangers truly afford Sergio Ramos? And does he truly want this challenge? His wages in Madrid and Paris were astronomical, and though he may no longer command such figures, he is unlikely to play merely for sentiment. Perhaps the lure is not financial but emotional. The chance to experience football in a raw, passionate, and unfiltered environment, far removed from the glitter of Spain or France. Perhaps he seeks to test himself in the harsh winds of Scotland, where history weighs heavily on every derby and where legends are made not in the glow of stardom, but in the mud and rain of fierce competition. Until the official announcement arrives, it remains a whisper, a rumor carried on the lips of fans and reporters alike. Yet, as with all the greatest football tales, the whisper alone is enough to stir imaginations, to raise heartbeats, and to remind everyone that football remains a theater of dreams, where even the most unlikely of scripts can sometimes play out before our very eyes. Greetings, fans. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned.